heavy lesson, so you want to make sure that you're following along, making sure that you're filling in the blanks. The set of all inputs for a function is known as the domain of the function, or the cause. Other words for domain are input or independent variable. Usually, this is labeled as x. The set of all outputs for a function is known as the range of the function, or the effect. Other words for range are not input, but output, or the dependent variable. Usually, this is labeled as y. Now, a situation that I like to give as an example is something like, as the temperature increases outside, the number of ice cream cones sold increases. So again, the cause in this situation would be the temperature, and then the effect in this situation would be the ice cream cones. So let's keep going with that example. Now, when you see different representations in math, you might see a table like this. Now, usually, the x is here, and then the y is here. So now we know if I asked a question like, where does the input on a table go? We should know that that relates to the x. So this actually relates to the input, domain, the cause, and the independent variable. I'm going to go ahead and abbreviate that IV. Now, in the same way, if I'm looking at this side of the table, I know that that's going to relate to anything that relates to y, so meaning the output, the range, the effect of a situation, or the dependent variable. So in this case, based on my temperature and ice cream cones example, I could put my temperature here, and I could put my ice cream cones right here. So now I labeled T for temperature and C for ice cream cones. The same way, another representation that you might see is a graph. Now again, this is the x-axis, and this is the y-axis. The x-axis then relates to anything that's related to the domain, the input, the cause, or again, the independent variable, IV. Similarly, the y-axis will relate to, I'm just going to draw an arrow here, the output, the range, the effect, and the dependent variable. So again, if I use my temperature and ice cream cones example, I know that my x-axis will be the temperature, because that was the cause of the situation. The temperature increased, and then that's why people started to eat more ice cream. If you need to pause here, make sure you understand that there are at least 4 words that relate to the x-axis and at least 4 words that relate to the y-axis. I would suggest doing that. Now let's go ahead and do some practical examples here. I'm going to go through 3 different examples, labeling causes and effects, and talking about the independent versus dependent variables. So here's the first example. It says the amount of time you spend practicing a musical instrument affects how well you play the instrument. Draw a small graph and table. So now I'm going to think to myself, what's the first thing that's going to happen? Is it that I'm going to practice, or is it that I'm going to immediately get better? I think to myself, I know the time I spend practicing is going to be the cause of the situation. I'm going to call that time practicing. Now I know the effect of the situation is that my skill gets better. Affects how well I play the instrument. So I'm going to call that the effect. And that's my skill level. So now I want to fill in the blanks. The blank causes the blank to change. Now I already figured out the cause and effect. So I'm going to say the time practicing causes the skill level to change. If I look back at the vocabulary notes that I've already taken, I know the independent variable in this case is related to the cause, which is the time practicing, and that the dependent variable is going to be related to the effect, or the skill level. Sorry for that lag there. Now it also asks me to draw a small graph and table. So I'm going to go ahead and just sketch these out, a table like this, and a graph like this. Now once again, I know that my x-axis is here, my y-axis is here, my x-axis is here, and my y-axis is here. So I knew that the cause is related to the x, so I know that on this side, I'm going to put my time practicing. And this relates to this x-axis, so time practicing. And then my y will be my skill. Go ahead and erase this. My skill level. I know that that relates to this, so that's going to be my skill level. Now in the future, we're going to talk about how this graph can actually look like, whether it goes up or down or stays constant. But right now, let's just worry about the labels. That was the first example. This second example, here we go. It says, people grow fatter if they do not exercise regularly. Draw a small graph and table. Now this might not be exactly true, there might be other factors, but let's just take this situation as it is. I'm going to think to myself, do people grow fatter just immediately, or is there a cause? Now in my mind, I know in this situation, it's because they do not exercise regularly. So exercise is the cause of the situation. That's what happens first. The second thing is that they grow fatter. And maybe that's not the nicest thing that I could say, but I'm going to go ahead and call it weight. And that's the effect of the situation. So again, I want to fill in the blanks. The blank causes the blank to change. It says the exercise, right, because that's the cause of the situation, causes the weight to change. I check back my notes. Independent variable is related to the cause, so that's the exercise. And I know my dependent variable is the effect, which is the weight. I also remember that this is my x-axis, and this is my y-axis, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in my table and graph really quickly. This is my exercise. And my y is the weight. Remember, cause is the x, y is the effect. Cause is the x, y is the effect. Hopefully this is starting to make sense. I'm going to go ahead and do one more example just to really drive home the point. Final example says, students score higher on tests when they do their homework regularly. Draw a small graph and table. Now I'm going to think to myself, do the test scores change on their own, or is there a cause to it? This statement is telling me that the homework is actually the cause, the thing that happens first, and that the test scores are the effect. So it says the blank causes the blank to change. I want to make sure that I'm putting in a noun here, so I'm going to say the homework, that one's relatively easy, causes the, let's call it test scores, to change. So again, I know the cause is related to the independent variable, so that's going to be homework. And the dependent variable, we'll go ahead and call that the test scores. Draw a quick table and graph. Again, I remember the cause is the x-axis, the effect is the y-axis. So the homework causes the test scores to change. Homework causes the test scores to change. And that's our lesson for today. Hopefully you got everything out of it.